Right now, buying nickels is probably your best bet as far as being a 100% safe investment. The lowly nickel, the 5-cent nickel, which is 25% nickel and 75% copper, as far as consistency is made up of those two metals. It's 105% of its, the melt value is 105% of the metals that are contained in it. And recently it was about 110%. I do expect nickel and copper to go up during 2012 in all commodities across the board because of quantitative easing that's going to be taking place in the United States and in Europe, because I don't think they're going to let the euro fall that easily, for one. And number two is if there's any type of conflict or whatever happens, metals usually do very well. The nickel itself is actually mainly used in stainless steel, a very important component of much things that are used throughout the world in many, many areas. And stainless steel is recyclable, so there's going to be a lot of impetus to keep manufacturing products with stainless steel. There's a lot more applications for it. So I think the demand for nickel is going to be pretty high going forward. And also in copper, there's a lot of infrastructure that needs to be replaced throughout the world. Some of the electrical lines and things like that. So maybe, and also as India and China keep expanding, I know that the real estate market in China has went down greatly. But as far as electrification, I think there's going to be a lot more demand for electrification in throughout the world, and the developing nations, or they're still not, I don't know if you call them emerging markets or whatever you want to call them. They're mainly developed nations, but the suburbia and the lifestyle that's envied throughout the world, that's in America, there's going to be a lot more electrification coming on board. So I think that's one demand for copper that's going to keep that metal up, even though it's a very volatile metal. But my point I'm saying is you really can't lose, because a nickel is 5 cents on its face value, because then you're never going to go below the 5 cents. It is, but I think this would be actually a long-term hold. You'd be the smartest play in this, because some years from now, the nickel could be worth 10 times. And, so if you have $1,000, you got $10,000. I think it's very difficult to accumulate these because you just can't walk into a bank with $1,000 at a shot and say, give me $1,000 worth of nickels. It's probably more like a $20 thing. But if you take $20 times 50 weeks, you have $1,000 worth of nickels. It's a small investment, but you know what? If you're doing a lot of small investments and every single one of them turns out to be a winner, you're doing very good, and that's the way you should be looking at it. As long as the investment has a good return, do it. It's just something you can't do a lot of. That's the only problem with this. Looking at copper prices for the last 10 years or so, it's been very volatile. I know back during the recession in 2008, copper dropped down to like below $1.50 a pound. Currently, it's between $3 and $4 a pound. Actually, as it's sitting right now, it's $3.56 a pound. It was lower back in September when they did margin rate hikes and everything like that across the board. But I expect in 2012 it's probably going to be exceeding $4 a pound, no problem. Nickel has actually been a lot higher in recent, within the last year. It's been up to about $13 a pound. It's down to like $8.50 a pound right now. But do expect it to go up. There's going to be a lot of demand for these, I think, because if it's not going to be, sad to say, if the economies don't turn around in the world, they're probably going to opt for war. So to feed the war machine, usually copper prices and nickel prices are going to go way up. So it's a good bet all the way around. And I'm assuming they're going to do a lot more, and I don't think it's a bad assumption to assume that there's going to be a lot more quantitative easing throughout the world, whether it's going to be through the ECB, the European Central Bank, buying up bonds, buying up debt. Despite what they say they're doing a very limited amount. They're probably going to do a hell of a lot more than they say, because I don't think they're going to let the currencies go down that easily. So do expect all the commodities go up. And right now, if you want a no-lose investment, that's just like that you could do in small pieces, and that's the nickel. And I've been ignoring it because it's so small, but I think I'm going to get back into it. I don't like the bulk of the coins. They just take up so much room. So I'm probably going to limit this investment to a total of $1,000 because that's that's a hell of that's like 5,000 nickels, I assume, right? Or 20,000 nickels, excuse me. So that's a hell of a lot of nickels as it is. But the way I look at it, if the nickels go up 2, 3 times, 10 times, or whatever they're going to go up to, so what? It's still worth it to do. And I think a lot of people are ignoring this, and I probably shouldn't put it out on YouTube. So but I don't have too many listeners anyway, so I don't think it's going to affect the world. But I'm just going to put out that I think I'm going to be doing a lot more of this, and come tomorrow, I'm going to pick up some more of these nickels again. And like I said, you can't lose. It's like back in I remember the 1964 silver that was out, and most people did not keep them. They spent them. I didn't keep any. I remember when John F. Kennedy came out with that silver certificate and everything like that too. Even though I was younger, I was still up on what that was, and because it wasn't even too many years after that I was reading more. So, most people in the 1960s did not accumulate the pure silver coins, and they were actually very stupid to do so because actually a lot of the coins were double the amount in certain markets not too many years later. And that's what I assume was going to happen with the nickel, because I think this is going to come out of circulation pretty soon. Like if nickel returned to $13 a pound and copper was $4.50 spot, I mean, this price would be way up there. It would be quite a bit higher, and it would probably be about 120% face value. At that particular point, I think they would take this out of circulation. It's not as bad to store as these 1982, pre-1982 pennies, because the bulk, because the nickel per pound is a lot higher price. Even though the nickel is 75% copper, it's still a lot less bulk to store. But I would recommend, and I'm doing this myself, I'll even store the quarters. Even though they're 20% face value, you don't know what's going to happen in hyperinflation, because what can happen is, if we do have a hyperinflationary period and the dollar does go down to nothing, you want to have the coins versus the paper, even if they're like base metals like this. But as far as the nickel goes, you can't lose, because right now, 105%, it was 110% just a few months ago or so. It dropped down to 100% of its face value as far as the melt value. I think in the future they're going to take these off the market. Probably they're going to take these out of the circulation in 2012. I guess because I expect a lot more of these inflation in these metals due to quantitative easing that's coming up. I do hold copper in this ETF called COPX, which is actually it's like goes across the board worldwide in the mining of copper, and it doesn't really follow any kind of copper price per se, but it could actually explode a lot higher because of if you see a lot of the copper prices going up a lot, you might see the mining stocks go up a lot more. And I do expect in 2012 a lot of the commodities to do extremely well. Even though this is a small amount of money to put on something, the way I look at it, if you make a number of small bets, and all the small bets are good winners, guess what? That adds up fast. So I think it's a smart thing to do. I'm going to be doing some more of this, and I just figured I'd share that. You can't lose. It's 5 cents, so you really can't lose.